All right, welcome. We're still on lecture 3. This is part C. So in part C, we're going to do more examples and some a little trickier with converting between units. So with that, we're on part C now. Let's go ahead and get started and get to our first example. Okay, our first example. Let's do one with maybe like length and meters and stuff like that. So one thing I like to do when I have some free time, I like to go hiking. And one place I've been is I've been to the top of the highest point in California. Now, the highest point in California is a mountain called Mount Whitney up there in the Sierras. And when you get up there, and maybe let's draw a little picture, when you're like you climb up this mountain and then you're standing on the top. I'll stand up here. Oh, this is not turning out too good. All right, that's me standing on the top. When you look down at the ground, there's a little plaque and it says, oh, congratulations, you've made it to the top of a mountain that's 14,944 feet tall. 14,494 feet tall. All right, let's say I wanted to know the height of that mountain, not in feet, but I wanted to know it in meters. How tall is that mountain in meters? All right, so we got to get in these good habits, right? Step 1, write down your beginning number and unit, 14,994 feet. Step 2, write down the unit you're going to. I'm going to meters. In between, we're going to do a little work. We're going to put a conversion factor. So I got a little space to put that conversion factor right there. All right, step 1 is basically set it up, right? Step 2, find that conversion factor. So again, we're going to use that handout. It's the same one we're going to be using in our Zoom times and so on. So you want to get used to looking at it and getting familiar with it. So if we look towards the top of that handout, there is one that's going to help us. It's the second one down. It goes from feet to meters right there. It goes from feet to meters. 1 foot is 0.3048 meters. Let me write it down in case you can't read it. Or even if you can, it's a good idea to write stuff out, right? The more you write out, the less confused you'll end up. All right. 1 foot is 0.3048 meters. All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to have to use that conversion factor. But how do we use it? Well, the way we know how to use it is the units tell us. If you have feet right here and you want feet to cancel, the way you make feet cancel is you put it in the bottom of the next step, the opposite blank. So I'm going to put feet down here, which means when I look at my conversion factor, the 1 is going to stay with it. 1 foot will be on the bottom, and whatever is on the opposite side, that has to go on the top. So half of the conversion factor goes on the bottom, the other half goes on the top. The way you know which one goes where is look at your units. So we have to put the 0.3048 meters here. Now in a minute, we're going to work it out. I'm going to type it in and we'll see what we come up with. Let's just double check it looks set up right. If you are setting this up right, the units should cancel except for the one you want, meters. And it does look like it cancels to me. All right, so let me go ahead and work it out. So this time what I would do is I'd have to multiply 14,494 times 0.3048 divided by 1. That doesn't really matter, right, if you divide by 1. But we got to multiply these two numbers together. So if I work it out on my calculator, let me do it again. I did this earlier, but I forget what it was, 0.3048. And I know you're going to get some number with probably way too many digits. So let me put up here what your calculator should say. So again, I would encourage you do this on your calculator so that you go like, am I using my calculator right? Well, try it out. That's what your calculator should say when you multiply those two numbers together. Now, last thing though, don't just type that number in, sapling. Don't just write that down on any handouts or whatever. You got to round it. So the way we round again, don't worry about the conversion factors. Those are considered exact values. Just worry about the beginning number. How many sig figs did I give you? How many sig figs are in this number? How many are in this number? There's 5. So if you start off with 5 sig figs, you're going to round, you're going to tell me 5 and the answer. The way I would round that to 5, it would be 4417.77. So, the 7 is followed by another 7. Bump it up. You got to go up. You got to make it an 8. It should look like that. All right. 4417.8. All right, hopefully that works out. I'm going to show you 1 or 2 more on this video because it can get a little tricky and it can be a little confused. You can get a little confusing. So, you can always go back and watch it again if you want. All right, let's move on to another example. Let's move on to another one. So let me flip over and we'll try another one. Make sure we're okay with this. I hope we are. Okay, another example. So, I like to do a lot of that relate to things that I've had to do in my life, right? So I told you I've climbed Mount Whitney. That was a big chore. That was a lot of effort. Now, another thing I've done is when I was in college, and I think I mentioned this in my little bio, I went to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech is a big engineering school. Everything there has to do with science. So at Georgia Tech, when we would, in the fall, there would be a road race. It was like a fun run, basically. And it still happens. I don't know if it's going to happen right now with the COVID thing, but it usually happens. And it's called the Pi Mile Road Race. So pi, not like the pie you eat, like the number pi. Pi miles. So all the science guys and gals would get out there and we would run pi miles. 3.14 miles. And we'd huff and we'd puff, and oh my God, it was a lot of exercise. It felt like a lot of exercise. And then I would wonder, well, if we ran pi miles, 3.14 miles, how many meters did I run when I would do that once a year? My once a year exercise when I was in college. Okay, so let's see if we can convert. So if you run 3.14 miles, how many meters is that? So again, good habits, good habits, good habits. Write down your beginning number and unit. Leave yourself some space. Write down the unit you're trying to go to, meters. And in the middle, we're going to have to put a conversion factor. So I'm going to pause for a second, and I want you to look carefully at that conversion factor list, and let's double check that you can find the right conversion factor. Miles to meters. If it's hard to see on the screen, maybe you print it out and you can look. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to look. I'm going to drink a little coffee. Pete's coffee, my favorite. I got it. All right. Where's the conversion factor you can use? Miles to meters. Do you see one? Miles to meters? There isn't one. So there is not one on this handout anywhere that goes from miles directly to meters. There's not one that says miles and then it says meters. There's not one that says miles and then it says meters. There's lots of conversion factors, but there's not one that has miles on one side and meters on the other. So what that means is sometimes you cannot get from where you start to where you end in one step with one conversion factor. You might need to put a couple of conversion factors together. You might need to do a problem in 2 steps. In other words, using 2 conversion factors. So I can go from miles, and then what, do you see anything that might help me? Well, one idea I have is I could go from miles to feet. And then once I go to feet, because I have one to do that, then I can go from, do you see a way to get better, to go from feet to meters? Oh yeah, there's one right up here. Feet to meters right there. So sometimes you can't get a problem done in 1 step. You got to go from 2 steps. We're going to use miles to feet, and then we're going to do feet to meters. So life is starting to get a little more complicated, huh? So if you need to use 2 conversion factors, what that means is you're going to need 2 sets of blanks. All right, so to make it a little easier, because it might be hard to read up there, let me write down those conversion factors. One is, it says 1 mile is 5,280 feet. The next one says 1 foot is 0.3048 meters. Now, it's getting a little more complicated because we're going to have to do this in 2 steps, but it's the same idea as far as you got to get your units to go away until you end up with the one you want. So how do we make units go away? We cancel them out by putting them in opposite blanks. So whatever unit you start with, that's miles. Where does it go to cancel out? Bottom. And then you put the 1 with it. I'm using this conversion factor right here. And then I'll put the opposite side of that conversion factor on top. 5,280 feet. All right, if I stopped right now, I quit. I was tired. Oh my God, I'm tired. Oh, I just woke up. I'm tired. And I stopped right now, I would have gotten myself to feet, which is fine, but that's not really what I wanted, right? I want meters. So we're going to keep on going. So again, setting up problems like this, you got to get used to this. So I have feet. Don't quit on me. Keep going. You're going to then go and use this one. Get rid of feet. Put it on the bottom. And then you put your meters on top. And that looks good. That looks done now. Because feet would cancel now using that second conversion factor. Whatever I put here, opposite blank makes it cancel. And now, once I wrote feet on the bottom, you can put the 0.3048 on top and you're okay. All right, so with that, that looks like, if I work it out, I believe the right answer, all right, what would I do? I would multiply 3.14 times 5,280 times 0.3048. So this times this times this, divide by 1 if you want, doesn't really matter. All right, because dividing by 1, right, you get the same answer. And so let me type it in my calculator because I want to make sure, yeah, we will talk about rounding, but I want to make sure you know what your calculator should say. So your calculator should be spitting out this number. Did you get that on your calculator? I hope you did. Now, that number has way too many digits. So how do we round? Oh, you just look at the number I gave you. 3 sig figs, I think. So I want you to round to 3 sig figs in your answer. 505. Is that 3 sig figs? That is 3 sig figs, but is there a problem? What do we need besides 505? We need a 0 on the end, right? Don't just write 505. When I was out there about dying, running so far, I did not run 500 meters. That's insulting. I ran, see, there's another digit there. That 3, we're going to turn into a 0. I ran 5,000 meters, not 500 meters. If you don't put a 0 on the end, you got a problem on your hands. So it should be, it's basically a little over a 5K, 5,000 meters, 5,050 meters is how long that road race is. Okay, let's try one more. Let's try one more. Okay, so let me flip over and let's see how we do on one more. Okay, our last example in this video. So what helps you, or the reason why this is a useful technique, is because when you learn this method, how I've shown you how you can get units to cancel and end up in a different unit, and you keep track of the units to decide how to use conversion factors, this stuff is helpful when you get to problems that are a little bit more confusing. And one way that they can be a little bit more confusing is you might be doing problems where there are units maybe you haven't heard of much, okay? So sometimes if you've heard of units, it makes it seem a little easier. And if you haven't heard of units, maybe it might seem a little bit more complicated. So if you use this method, it really doesn't matter if you ever heard of them or not, okay? So for example, one unit that you might have heard of, a little bit, but maybe not too much, is a unit of energy called a BTU. So a BTU stands for a British thermal unit. It's the unit that air conditioners are measured in. So if you buy like a window air conditioner or a portable air conditioner, it'll tell you this thing can get rid of 10,000 BTUs per hour in your house or whatever. So that's a unit of energy. And let's say that you looked somewhere and in the package on the air conditioner said it's rated at 5,200 BTUs. And I wanted to know how many, well, let's go to another unit of energy. And another one you may be a little familiar with is the one that you get when you eat food, and that's called a calorie. How many calories are that? So again, it really doesn't matter if you've heard of these units or not. You can get from one to the other. So with this one, I'm going to get you to help me out a little bit because you saw me do a couple of these so far. So let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. So first thing I want you to think about is when you want to go from BTUs to calories. By the way, these are units of energy, so you need to look down here, and again, you might want to print this if you can't read it. I want you to tell me how many steps would you have to do this in? Okay, now what would you have to convert to first? You would convert from BTU to joules, that's what the J stands for there, to joules, and then you would go from joules to, so we have one BTUs to joules, and then we can go from joules to calories. We're going to have to do this in 2 steps, all right? So as far as that goes, that means when I set this thing up, I'm going to write down my beginning number and unit. Oh, let me be consistent with my colors. All right, I'm going to write down my beginning number and unit. Then I'm going to leave some room, and I've already decided I can go from BTUs to joules, so that's got to be one set of blanks. And then I'm going to go from joules to calories, so I need another set of blanks. Okay. Now, when we work it out, it's going to take 2 steps. Our ultimate goal is to get to calories. Okay. So let me go ahead and write down the conversion factors again so you can see them a little better in case you're struggling reading this tiny screen maybe. All right, 1 calorie is 4.184 joules. 1 BTU is 10,050 joules. All right, those are your 2 conversion factors. Let me help you out just a little bit more. We're going to use this one first to get to joules. Then we'll use the top one to get from joules to calories. So, when you are ready to start filling in that first set of blanks, what number goes on the bottom right here? What number and unit goes down here? What number and unit goes down here? Okay, it should be, you're going to put on the bottom 1 BTU. And what would you put on top? You would put the other side of the conversion factor on top, 1,050 joules. Oh yeah, that looks good because BTUs will cancel. Okay, now what is going to go on the bottom of the next step? What are you going to be putting right here? What are you going to put on the bottom of the next step? It should be 4.184 joules. Should be 4.184 joules. And what would you put on top? Oh, you would put the 1 calorie on top. So joules will now cancel, right? Joules will now cancel. And then we're using this top conversion factor. So if we put 4.184 on the bottom, you would have to put 1 calorie on top. Okay. Does that look right? Oh yeah, that looks right. Okay, so you're going to type this in your calculator and you're going to have to round it. When you round it, how many sig figs should be in your answer? How many sig figs should be in your answer? It should be 2. All right, so it should be 2. So if you type this in on your calculator, you're going to get 5,200 times 1,050 divided by 4.184. If you do it and you round it correctly, this should be the answer. It should be 13, and then you need 5 zeros, I think. You should be getting that. You might want to double check. All right, so that's it for this video. When we get to Zoom soon, we'll be doing some more practicing on this. So if you're stuck or confused, that's the end of our conversion examples, but I'd be glad to talk to you about email, or you can talk to me in Zoom if you need some more help on this, of course. Okay, bye.